My wife and I were having a lovely conversation, as we often do last night, and recognized that there's rarely a time when either of us are at a loss for words or loss for something to talk about, a loss for something to engage one another. And yet today, at about 10 o'clock California time, I was still wondering what was I going to do for my midday show. And then Larry saved me. Larry Goldberg put out an essay today that I just, it was fascinating, interesting, useful, all of the above. I immediately put it up on my X, or promoted on my X feed, and called him and said, "Hey, Larry, would you like to talk about it on the show?" And he said, "Sure." Larry, before we get into it, I hear that you've had a few more experiences with your 12.5. Care to share?
So, so I drove to a restaurant last night, 16 miles of all kinds of driving, city driving in the city itself, and freeway driving on the way there, and neighborhood driving, getting out to the freeway. As you know, it's a challenge in my neighborhood. And yeah, it was faultless going there and faultless coming back.
Yeah.
I I decided yesterday, and yesterday I also went out to a store. I decided yesterday, look, I'm not going to make any excuses to people who I may be, slowing down or blocking, or, I was going to just let it do itself and only intervene in the case of, serious, any safety issue.
Right.
But I could have rested. I could have not bothered making this whole, resolution. I could have just simply driven because it was faultless. It was absolutely faultless. The only remaining issue for me is it doesn't park me in the parking lot yet. So
Yes. Okay.
up to that point yet. But I mean, it is clearly ready for, at the very least, very least, assisted, robotaxi. In
Right.
other words, somebody behind the wheel just to. But I mean, it is amazing. It is just amazing. I have to say we're closing in on it. I thought it was going to be the end of next year before we really got there,
Yeah.
or sometime next year.
Yeah.
But now I'm wondering if the new year won't see us, up and running.
That's exciting. That's really exciting.
Yeah, yeah.
All right, Larry. So everybody's very interested, concerned, wondering if now that the board has been approached by Elon to potentially put this $5 billion into xAI, and you provided a lengthy analysis. And I thought this was extremely worthy of everybody paying attention to. I hope they do pay attention to, because I mean, I think it's a big investment, and people should be paying taking a look at both sides and trying to make up their mind what they like and what they don't like. So I'll turn it over to you.
All right. So let me share my screen. Start by sharing my screen. I've got to find the share screen on a new. There we go. Have you got the screen according?
You are ready to go.
Okay. So I posted today on X this long piece, which I gave a lot of thought to, because I was in conversations with several people who were debating should or shouldn't Tesla invest in xAI, and what are the benefits and what are the risks and so on. And then, that turns on, is xAI a good investment? And then we also had to deal with this whole business of, why didn't Elon start xAI within Tesla? What was the reason? And just like he did Optimus. And then, should Tesla become an investor even if they didn't start it up? So those are the principal questions I tried to tackle. And that's the the purpose of the post. And so I want to I want to put my thoughts down, and everybody else have their own thoughts. I've seen a few responses to my piece today, some of them very negative. Mostly very positive, by the way, very positive, but there are a lot of people, and I'll deal with some of the objections as I get to that particular slide. So, the primary question is XAI good business? Is it likely to succeed? And so you have to think about this whole field of AI and where it's going. And most particularly, you have to think about these large language models and what they're doing. And so I want to talk about the large language models and the pluses and the minuses, where they fit, and what's likely to happen with them. Firstly, there are a lot of people in the business right now. I mean, there are probably 10, who are advanced and who are major contenders. And then there's probably below the 10 that we know, or the two handfuls we know of. There's probably, quite a lot of also-rans or wannabes, as is, normal in these software evolutions.
Right. Of course, in this particular case, you have to be able to pony up some pretty substantial amounts of money for hardware, for electricity, and for people in order to be a player.
That is true. And actually, I'll go into the actual amounts of money that we're talking about.
Oh, okay.
So let's start by stipulating that these LLMs, these large language models, these are the AI, this is the technology that powers this AI. There's no such thing as a large language model. There are a very wide variety of approaches, and the science is evolving, and practice is evolving very, very rapidly. So one is not like the other, I say, even from the same vendor. I mean, we have many vendors who have multiple different models, each with a different focus or a different blend or a different methodology. Each has a unique architecture and may be trained on a different set of data selections, with the result that each have unique attributes. And we're seeing that emerge very real. Everybody thought that ChatGPT from OpenAI was the berries and it was the top of the pile. And now there are some real challenges to it. And it depends on, what benchmark you use. And then the benchmarks themselves are a little corrupt because people start training to the benchmarks. And so, you don't really know what's happening. The other thing is, I don't think that LLMs are going to be, the ultimate product of the AI companies. I think they're going to be a kernel or a principal component or one of the major components. And they're going to be a foundation to, new and unique architectures and more particularly applications that are going to be built upon them. And one very simple one is like the chatbot, or the simple question and answer thing that we see in Grok and we see in the ChatGPT. That's just a very thin sliver, but there are coding applications and there are all kinds of associated applications. We haven't begun to explore those possibilities yet.
Chamath said the other day on the All In podcast that one of the things that he's looking at, I also saw Eric Schmidt did a big interview yesterday where he said the same thing, where one of the big ones is going to be the possibility of small companies, 10 to 20 people, coming into a large enterprise or a government and saying, look, we can now provide you with something like Salesforce you just purchase it one time, and it'll be better than Salesforce. It will be unique to your corporation. You won't have to pay that monthly fee from now on. You'll have it, you'll just own it. And that this could be.
I wrote a paper about 3 months ago, or maybe more actually now. I've just realized we were away for 3 months before we left I read a paper about 6 months ago and said it's the end of software as a service as we've known.
Right.
And I posited why, but he's right. I mean, we are in the process of a huge revolution, and we don't know where it's going to end. My guess, 𝐄𝐤𝐬𝐲's guess, these are guesses.
Yeah.
We can't foresee the future. It's the same thing that happened when the internet occurred. Everybody was, opining of how the internet was going to evolve, and nobody was right.
Right.
The only thing that was fair to say is that it was going to be revolutionary. And I think we can say the same thing here. So what I say here is unique solutions will emerge. Combining these LLMs in unique ways with a wide range of AI and coding techniques is going to produce a Cambridge explosion of many new platforms that are outgrowths of these LLMs, often driving specialization and changing the nature of the LLMs themselves.
Right.
And we just don't know where that's going to go. So those that succeed in creating unique and exciting products will win. So the LLMs are not the secret. The secret is the end, the secret sauce that emerges at the end in terms of user applications, experience, and the like. And so we're just at the beginning. So when you say, is XAI likely to succeed? It depends on brilliant product management.
Right.
So what we should talk about is XAI's opportunity and its differentiation.
Okay.
Because that's really the question. Are we going to invest in XAI, or should we actually do XAI instead of investing in AI? So Grok, which is an LLM and its accompanying application, Grok, will largely be based on 𝐿.com's data. And it's the key reason why X was a founding partner in XAI.
Right.
Because the first thing you need when you want to build an LLM is the data. Now, there's publicly available data. You can scrape the internet for the publicly available data and use that. And that's a really good start anyway. But what X has, that nobody else has, is, this gigantic trove of tweets that go back forever and posts that, started in the Elon era, with all the possible, negatives and positives about all of those tweets. But it is a huge trove of very valuable information.
Yes.
And so the other thing is, X is driving towards the everything app. And so Grok will have the opportunity to not only have the data, but evolve application support for this everything app, which is a very rich field of endeavor. They will have a sort of a captive customer in this everything app, with doing everything for the everything app by way of AI. And so the other huge differentiator, and maybe the most important differentiator, is the greatest product manager we've had, since Edison.
Yeah.
And probably the greatest that ever lived.
Right.
I mean, this guy designs products that everybody thinks are terrible, but end up being world beaters. And the list goes on and on. So it's a huge differentiator. We shouldn't underestimate it. And of course, he's at X, but he's also at Tesla. So we kind of get him both ways. But the point is that it's going to be a differentiator for XAI.
Right. Oh, a huge. I mean, let's face it. If at the end of the day, I hate to use that phrase. I tried so hard not to. If Elon is involved, a lot of folks want to be involved automatically because they recognize.
That's an issue I'll get to, and that's
Okay, all right.
laughing. But I'm talking about pure
As a product guy, yeah.
Imagineering,
Yes.
just the ability to foresee what a product should be, rather than what people think they want to have.
Right.
And so, you only have to look at the Tesla vehicle. You only have to look at the boring tunnel. You only have to look at Neuralink. You only have to look at the products that he has created in his time. Look at SpaceX.
A Cybertruck.
But, to understand that there is, we're talking about a genius level product management. Not that there aren't other aspects of his genius that apply, but that definitely applies. I mean, right. I'm very focused in product, have always been in my companies, probably to my detriment, have interfered in that. But he is like, he is a giant in that field. There's no doubt about it, if not the giant. So beyond that, Grok will also provide support for other Musk companies. And what's important about that is that they too will feed requirements that will drive this product evolution. So, there's like the in-vehicle utility for robo-taxis and boring company transport vehicles and just Tesla cars.
Yeah.
Having this kind of AI, to having, Grok level AI in your car just provides a whole panoply of potential services that can be added to the vehicle. And that's the part, that's the argument that the pro, Tesla owning xAI will give. But we should understand that's just one piece. The everything app support is another piece.
Right.
Then we get to language and general knowledge for Optimus, being able to provide Optimus with a level of intelligence that is human-like. And then there's knowledge base for Neuralink. Can you imagine if you plug into Neuralink and you have access to this, this AI, embedded in your brain. And then there's the generalized and or specialized AI for SpaceX. There are multiple potential applications for AI in SpaceX, and that's highly specialized in some respects, and it will feed upon the generalized knowledge anyway.
And Larry, let me add another layer to what you're saying here, and that is, this is only talking about within the Tesla group. So as we're looking at it as an investment that Tesla is making in a company, a separate company, all of these things, all of these capabilities will also be potentially sold to other organizations that have robots of different kinds, not necessarily even humanoid, yes. All kinds of things like that.
Absolutely. But what I'm trying to point to is that within xAI, they have access to proprietary knowledge.
Right.
That proprietary knowledge will add to the knowledge, to the capability of the xAI. That's what differentiates, for example, Gemini.
Right.
And that is, it's, YouTube and Google data.
Database, right.
That's what differentiates the models that Meta produce, because they have access to all of Facebook and all of, the Meta applications. So what I'm trying to drive at here is not so much the ability to sell to third parties and glean their data, but what is already available within the X community.
Right.
And so on. So there's opportunity, but there's also the ability of differentiation.
Right.
So then we get to, why can't Tesla simply make its own LLM? So here, this is the most difficult piece for a lot of people to get over. Oh, he already owns Tesla. Why should he be allowed to start another company and he should just build it within Tesla? Well, I would be strongly opposed to building it within Tesla at this stage. And by the way, we can't miss this stage, because if we don't build it now, we're going to miss this boat.
Right.
A little late. And that's, because of the whole OpenAI mess, but that's a separate issue. So building a general symbolic-based model AI versus building FSD or real-world AI requires an entirely new dedicated platform and team. You can't mix the two.
Right.
You cannot take the FSD team and say, oh, we're going to do general AI as well. It would mean FSD would come to a grinding halt.
Exactly.
FSD is a full-time, 24 hours a day grind to get this thing done. It is really one of the greatest challenges that we've ever seen. As great a challenge as, OpenAI is facing with what they're doing and xAI is doing with building an LLM. So it requires an entire dedicated hardware platform and an entire dedicated team. So why the dedicated hardware? Because creating a foundation model requires functionally a limitless amount of training, just as FSD does. If you build that for Grok, you cannot steal anything from FSD. You cannot use what is being built for FSD to build Grok, and you cannot build FSD on what is being built for Grok, because you steal one from the other, it will slow things down. And, we're estimating $4 billion for the current xAI.
Mm-hmm.
And that $4 billion, by the way, in the post I made, I give references to the posts, the sources I used for these numbers,
okay,
which seem to be very sensible. It was some work done by Louis Peters. I've got the link here on the slide, and it's in the post. He's done some great work.
Okay.
And basically we're talking about limitless hardware.
Right.
What is it limited by? It's limited by ability to produce the hardware and to pay for it.
And I keep asking Brian Wang. I says, isn't there going to be a limit? Isn't there going to be a time when we'll have enough? And he keeps going, no.
We're far away, ways away from enough, ways away. Right. We can't see the horizon of enough yet. We're not at that point.
Right.
So right now, what Louis Peters estimates is that we're at 4 billion for the current xAI. That's 100K H100 training cluster, of which 32K has already been installed, and the rest is being installed in the summer. And by the way, and here's a digression. I don't want to get into a debate about it, but here's a digression. A lot of this was the H100s that were delivered, that were ordered by Tesla and were being delivered, and Elon said, no, send it to xAI. And the reason for it was very simple. Elon was very focused on delivering these H100s into the new facility being built in Texas.
Right.
Mm-hmm. And because he knew that they would be delivered in advance and he wouldn't be ready for them, he contracted well before these were available for xAI or available to Tesla. He contracted with Oracle for capacity for FSD, and that's why we've had FSD capacity sufficient.
Right.
Build this current version 12. We've never run out of capacity, and the move of this and some of this that I'm saying now, I know, some of this I'm guessing.
Okay.
But I think it's a really good supposition. What I do know is we've never been short because Tesla diverted these H100s. they diverted these H100s because where they had planned to put them was in the new South building in Giga, Texas. And because they knew they wouldn't be ready in time, they contracted with Oracle to build this H100 supercomputer, and which they're using and which they used for V12.
Right.
So that's why they diverted these. And that's what they will be. These are the H100s that they'll be installing in the South building. So getting back to the main conversation, there's $4 billion for the current XAI. And next summer, the B200 clusters will be installed 300K, $15 billion.
Just for the hardware.
Just for the hardware. So we're already at $19 billion before the end of next summer. This is not small change.
No. And it's got to have a building to go into, and it's got to be hooked up to power. And
well, the power is a whole investment
itself,
because you can't get an interconnect onto the grid in time for this amount of power. And so he's had to build gas generators. And, the capital investment here is very considerable. And so in summary, by the way, these numbers, I believe, incorporate capital investment. I'd have to read it again.
Oh, it does. Okay.
So in summary, the hardware platform just in the next year is going to cost $19 billion. And to Brian's point and to your point, there's no end.
Yes, right.
You're going to have another, capital investment in the following year. And that doesn't include the energy costs, the cost of buying the energy, and the general operating expenses, and the people.
Yes.
Are not cheap.
Right.
So what we're saying here is that in order to, as these naysayers are calling, in order to keep it within Tesla, we'll need about $20 to $30 billion.
As a starting point, plus.
Right. And we don't know when the income's going to come.
Right.
So we know so why can't we simply, make our own LLM? And this is the people side. I spoke about the hardware side. Now I'm going to talk about the people side. We know these are currently the most sought after engineers in the world, right? The focus is not so much on salary, but the ability to profit directly from their work.
Maybe we should back up just 1 second and say that pretty much the smartest people in the world right now, I've said this a couple times on the channel, maybe even when you were on, but a year ago, or 2 years ago, I think the smartest people in the world would have agreed that batteries were maybe the most important new thing that needed to be exploited at the fastest rate possible. That all changed a year ago, November.
I didn't think
now the smartest people in the world all agree getting to AGI is the #1 big deal.
Yeah, I think you're right. You're late by a year. I think that realization came 2.5 years ago.
2.5 years ago, okay.
Maybe you're not as close to it as I am, but
right.
We became very aware of it at what we call the ChatGPT moment.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that was only a year and a half. That's already been 2.5 years.
Oh yeah. It's ChatGPT broke the surface in December of 2022. 22, yeah. So, and that's when it broke surface, but there was a lot of knowledge was going on before then. It all started with the Google paper, all you need is attention. And that sort of the excitement started to build. But back in November of 2022, I think is when ChatGPT broke surface.
Yeah.
And so, there's been a huge focus. Anyway, the point is, that, it's not so much the salary that is important, although obviously people have to, eat and live in a reasonable way. But what they're really interested in, profiting directly from their work. they're not attracted to Tesla because Tesla has, you know, an almost $100 billion a year business in selling vehicles, in selling batteries. And so although they have an FSD activity, that FSD activity now is very far advanced. People who wanted to work on it are working on it. To try and build a core AI business, and by the way, I forgot to mention, of course, the bot.
Yes.
Optimus. To try and build in Tesla general AI, their business will be intermingled with Tesla's business. And it would be very difficult to unstring or unfurl that spaghetti. So he has tried to hire people into AI, into Tesla, but they're discomforted because there's a lot of layers to Tesla, and it is in many ways a 20-year-old company.
Right.
So for them, what they see is, they want their ChatGPT moment independent and pure. So you may not agree with them. You may have a different perspective because you're a Tesla shareholder, but that's not your call.
Right. Yes.
And so even though Tesla we think will do extremely well in the future, they're looking for like the 1000x tomorrow.
Right.
And whether they'll earn it or not from Anthropic or any one of the new startups, who knows? But this is the nature of the beast. This is what they're attracted to, and they want to be in a pure, AI environment.
Right. Makes sense. Makes total sense. When you can call your own shots, you can call your own shots. And if I trust that Elon had great conversations with these people. I'm sure he's pretty much in communication, unless the bridge has been burned at some point. He's in really good communications with the top guys around the country, even those that are still in school. And so he's going to be getting that kind of feedback that we would have no idea what it's like to be in the room.
Well, clearly he's got the right people, because look what happened. I mean,
yeah, I know. Yeah.
No time at all, just from scratch, and it's doing incredibly well. So let's talk about the capital needs.
Okay.
So now we know that we need about $20 billion of CapEx in the next year for XAI.
Right.
Tesla's got about $30 billion in liquidity, but our CapEx plans for Tesla alone is $30 billion.
Right.
And, and it says over the next 23 years. Actually, it means 2 to 3 years.
2 to 3. Okay, 2 to 3 years. Okay.
Yeah. I should correct that, shouldn't I? And they need reserves, because these are, you and I talk about it every week. These are uncertain times.
Sure.
So it's unlikely that they could invest anything approaching $20 billion in hardware, let alone in operating expenses.
Right.
And we also have to talk about near-term profitability. Tesla's a public company,
right,
and has many, many projects reaching, positivity. Any investment of a, material nature approaching $20 billion in operating costs and capital investment will jeopardize that story, that trajectory.
And in fact, I think, Larry, that would also speak to one of the things about those other high-level people in terms of their interest in joining the team. They don't want to be under that pressure. This is pure science. And when you're in the pure science realm, you don't want to be pressured by having to have a product next week. And I think that's probably an important consideration.
You're absolutely on target. You're absolutely on target. That's kind of the other side of the same coin that we talk about. So, what has Tesla got? It's got all these new vehicle models coming out in 2026. We talk about a new book in 2026 2025, we talk, I meant 2025, not 2026. My mind's already in 2025 in terms of current year. But the point is, 2025 is a very big year for Tesla. We're going to have all models. We've got FSD blooming. We've got robotaxi, services about to commence. We have the Semi coming at the end of the year in 2026. We have this new Megapack factory coming in 2026, and our existing Megapack factory blossoming. We have Optimus above all, starting to engage in commercial sales. So we have 1,000 flowers blooming.
Yes,
and what we don't want to do is get back into the development mode. We've got Optimus in development mode. We've got FSD in development mode. We've got robotaxi in development mode. We've got new vehicles in development mode, but they're all short-term, relatively, 1 to 5 years.
Oh, even I think 18 months in almost every case.
That's why I say 1 to 5 years. So it's all within the next short-term period.
Right.
But when we talk about AI, we're talking 5 to 10 years.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And Larry, I think the argument is stronger for the first idea that the employees would be impossible to get, the people that you really need. I think that's the strongest argument. If Tesla wanted to raise $50 billion tomorrow, they could go to the capital market and get it like in a heartbeat.
Randy, I'm not going to argue which is stronger. What I'm trying to say is they're both powerful.
They both are important, yes.
And you may take one view, I may take another view. It doesn't matter. They're both very powerful arguments, and if you take either of them, they are definitive arguments. They are determinative arguments, but together they're very powerful. So in summary, this is not the time Tesla to launch a $20 billion startup project. This is a project on which Tesla's other projects, while they may benefit, are not critically dependent. We would consume a huge portion of our cash reserves, and the success of which is many years distance.
Right.
So this is not the time. But a $5 billion investment in xAI makes all the sense in the world. It would give Tesla a meaningful stake in one of Elon's biggest bets, and one which could benefit Tesla particularly, and all of Elon's companies in general, and which would be a great value in the future as an investment, but even more in what it could benefit Tesla directly.
Right.
By taking a minority stake, we are betting a relatively small proportion of our overall cash position. This will stop the cries for buybacks of shares, share buybacks.
Right.
And this was part of my argument. We have the most fertile mind in the world running our company. Why would we give that money that we have accumulated to shareholders when we could put it in the hands of this incredibly fertile mind?
Right.
To multiply our wealth.
Yes, absolutely.
So by taking this minority stake, we're betting a relatively small proportion of our overall cash position, a reasonable bet given our financial and risk profile. Right. And that's really the bottom line of my argument. So here endeth the lesson.
Here endeth. Okay, so Larry, I think the other part that I would add to this would be the potential return on investment. So you have on the one hand, you have the bet. Then also there is, what's the possible return on investment?
The reason I'm not engaging in that.
Okay. All right.
You want to put me on the screen or?
You're there. You're good.
I'm good. I don't see it. I see myself in. But the reason that I'm not going to engage in that, because that's the given when you start arguing about whether or not we should own it in full or whether we should make a minimal investment in it. I mean, I talk about the value that it has, in that it has this brilliant product manager.
Right.
It has X as a captive client and a captive data source.
Mm-hmm.
And it has the other Elon companies as potential first clients, and also sources of data and sources of additional functional requirement. So I'm taking that as a given. If you want to invest in XAI, the argument is, do you go whole hog and put it all into Tesla?
Right.
Which is what so many of the Grinches are demanding. They're saying, oh, it's not being fair, blah, blah, blah. And on the other hand, do you make an investment in it at all?
Right.
And now we can talk about, profitability if you're going to make an investment in it all. My own view is that there is no way to determine the future profitability of this enterprise. None.
Yeah.
You have absolutely no knowledge. You have absolutely nothing to go on other than early evidence is that OpenAI is doing extremely well in terms of building a revenue stream, and that Microsoft are somewhat struggling to build a revenue stream, and that all the others are not really at revenue positive, or they're not doing very much about building a revenue stream yet. But if you believe that this is the future of IT, if you believe this is a future of human, interaction with machines, then you have to have a certain degree of blind faith that this is going to have a huge opportunity for the future. My view is that probably, given the product management genius we have, we will succeed where others will fail. That's just, if you look at my decision model,
yeah,
there are so many negatives on the base of the model, so many negatives on the base of the model because of the unknowns.
Right.
Unknowns really result in quite a negative impact. But, the balancing feature is the situation at X, the ability of our product manager, and the skill level of the supporting teams. So,
yeah, I think that's all correct. When I first was contemplating this weeks ago, when it was really first kind of starting to become a concept, the idea of never bet against Elon crystallized in a certain way, and that is, he's the guy that landed the rockets on their made reusable rockets. Let's make it the easier way to say it. He's the one that is going to solve vision only automation on vehicles. And we could go down a long list of the other things that have happened under his watch. Now, some of that is
don't forget made profitable EVs.
Made profitable EVs, yes. Yeah, among others. And there's going to be one winner, and the winner's going to take most. And my suspicion, again, so my suspicion is that Elon's going to win on this one. My suspicion is that he will have the best, our first, our most effective, our most useful version of AGI out there. I just think that's just a natural conclusion based on historical evidence.
Well, I think that's a fair assumption, but I would modify that. My personal views to modify that a little bit. I think there are going to be multiple winners, and those multiple winners will take most. So
that's fair. Yeah. So then I asked the question this way the other day on X. And I said, okay, if you've got $1 million, I said this to Warren, if you've got $1 million invested in Tesla, would you, if somebody picked up the phone right now and called you and said you could take a $10,000 piece XAI, would you take it? It's like, so we could bring that down to earth for some people. All right, you got $100,000 investment in Tesla. Would you take $1,000 position in X if somebody picked up the phone right now and offered you that opportunity? And I think most people that know anything about Elon would say, heck yeah, I would take that. I would take that shot any day.
Yeah, I mean, to your point, and you're exactly right, because to your point, I had the opportunity of investing in XAI.
Right.
A small percent, very small percentage of my investment in Tesla, and I took it.
Yeah.
Actually, without even seeing the documentation.
Yeah, right. Exactly. That's kind of my point. I wouldn't have to see the documentation either. I would put 1% of what I now have in Tesla in anything that Elon started, quite frankly.
There's a little bit more than 1%, but anyway.
Okay.
Yeah. But I mean, your point is well made. And I think that there would be a very large percentage of us would do. By the way, there's some confusion on X. People think that they will have to be voting this issue.
Yeah.
But they will not. This is a
will not. Will not. You're saying will not.
Will not. They will not be voting this. This will be a board level decision. It's not a shareholder level decision, because to invest $5 billion for Tesla is not, it's not anything that would require a shareholder approval.
Would you imagine that he might do it, however, even though not necessary, just in order to say, look, I want you guys to be part of the decision?
Absolutely not. Okay. No board is going to
go to that expense.
Invite their shareholders to become participants in those kinds of decisions. Okay. Shareholders get to vote by buying or selling their shares, right, or voting on those issues which are reserved for shareholders. A $5 billion investment for a company valued at $600 billion or $700 billion, whatever it happens to be
this week, yeah.
And/or has got, a balance sheet of, $50 to $100 billion is not something that any board would suffer requesting a shareholder approval on.
That was my first thought when I first heard about the idea of putting it to the shareholders. It was also my first thought, just from my own background in this area. And so I'm glad to have you confirm that, or confirm it to the best of your knowledge. But I agree with you. I think no, the only reason I thought maybe would be because Elon might want, because he's involved in the other company, he might want the shareholders to have that.
Think about the terrible situation to get the company into. Every time it has a major decision to make, there'll be this question, oh, well, you better go put it to the shareholders. No, I don't think that it's necessary. It's such a small investment, $5 billion, that really, I mean, it's the right way to pitch it. Let's put $5 billion into the company, gives us, it gives us a seat at the table. It gives us a participation in the profit. And the downside is relatively limited to the amount that, Gary Black wanted to just give back to shareholders.
Shareholders, right. Yes.
Which, now the question is, would the shareholders have preferred that to this? I doubt it very much. So, a resolution on share buybacks, I don't know if it's a shareholder agreement for that. I don't think so.
No, I don't think so. No, Apple's been doing those share buybacks forever, and they just decide every year what they're going to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's the story.
Right. Well, that's why I brought you on, Larry, because I thought it was excellent. I thought this is something that I think we all want to fully understand, and try to go in with eyes open, and not, let the TESLAC or TESLAC, or however you pronounce it. Larry, what's the right pronunciation? TESLAC. I see. Okay. It's one of those ones. Do you remember in when you're looking at the funnies when you were a kid,
Yeah.
And there would be all these, especially in peanuts, these different names, and you were thinking of them one way in your head, and then you'd talk to a friend and they're like, no, it's not. So Tesla Q, from now on, I'll know how to say it right, Larry. That'll be good.
And then, the other thing that we should mention is that, there's a lot of chatter on X about this issue of that it's Tesla really has the right to this thing. I don't think that's a good way to look at it at all. I don't see the value. I mean, for the very reasons that we've spoken about, putting it into Tesla, I think would have been a serious mistake. And the other issue that is talked about on Tesla, the judge will throw this out, blah, blah, blah. It'll be fodder for another court case. Here's the good news on that. That court case can't happen in Delaware.
Yeah, that's right. That's the good.
That court case would have to happen in Texas. I want to tell you, it wouldn't even get to court.
Right. Okay. Well, all right, Larry. Well, that is outstanding. Thank you very much. And of course, we will be seeing you again on Good News Monday in barely 28, 30 hours, something like that. So that'll be phenomenal. We'll see if maybe the new week will bring us the beginning of some FOMO over 1010, which is only 45 days away now.
That's right. If they don't, God forbid, put it back again.
Okay, no, not that. Okay, Larry, thanks again.
Yeah.
It was great. Appreciate it. And to all of you out there, it's been great talking to you.